Okay.
Are we here? Yes.
We are here.
2 weeks in a row. It's a miracle.
Yes, yes. We had to make a tour from the other end of town to be here today because we were, of course, we live in Central Florida. We were at Disney World. And so maybe you want to fill us in why we're at Disney World, Janet.
Well, yes, we have our oldest grandson, Lewis, has Down syndrome. He's 11 years old. And so since he's been born, we've taken an active interest in Down syndrome and supporting kids with special needs. And I was actually the chair of the Down syndrome board here in the area for a while. And so there's always new research coming out, new ideas. So they have a national conference once a year, and it happens to be in Orlando. So we've been down there with our daughter and the 2 grandkids, supporting her and going to some seminars and learning some new things as he hits teenage years. So that's it's never a dull moment in our house. We're always learning something. What are you doing? It's like doing acrobatics in the corner.
If I want to hear you talk, yes. There we go. Now I am right.
Now you're distracting me.
I had kind of choked myself with my monitors. So, but I'm good. I'm not going to die now.
That's good. It's sort of on live. That's good. Well, we are so glad we're here, that you are here. We're glad that we're here. We had to allow tons of time because traffic is pretty horrendous in Central Florida. And we wanted to be sure we'd be here. So we're back home. We're doing this. We're really glad to be here. We're glad that you're here with us. We know that there's some new people who haven't been before. We've still got people signing up. So welcome to you.
Right.
The point of this live is just to touch base, to tell a few stories, hang out together for a little bit, hang out with people who are reading, doing the read aloud with us, give them some background information and just cheer them on, because what you're doing is an amazing thing, to be reading aloud with your family and to be, inputting that in a way that has a personal side to it as well. It's Lillian Trasher's story that we wrote in your reading. So we sort of all feel like we're on a team to help get kids involved and interested. So we've got someone from North Carolina, South Carolina, Alaska. So that is very awesome. A lot of you have emailed us during the week just to touch base and share maybe some of your own stories and your own struggles. We've got several missionary families here that definitely need our prayers. And also to ask some questions. We've had 2 people who suggested people we should look at to write about. So I've ordered whatever books I can find on them to have a good read. I'm always curious as to what we don't know about, people we haven't heard of that would make good stories. So they are in the post at the moment. So that's exciting.
Yes. So we hope you've enjoyed your week of reading the second half of Lillian Trasher. It's a great story. I think I said last week, I hadn't read it in a long, long time and had pretty much forgotten a lot of the story. So I finished it last night in a hotel down the road, and it was great. I'm like, oh man, I was moved by the story, I'm like, wow, these authors did a great job. No, seriously. It was just really enjoyable to read it again and to just see all the amazing things that Lillian did and that God did through Lillian. And so.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So we were kind of wondering, I guess a lot of you are finished or nearly finished the book. If there's anything that struck you about it as you were finishing it, anything that you learned from it, or anything that you're going to take from it, either you or your kids. If anyone wants to jump in and share any of that, we would love to read your comments and to share what you found moving or inspirational about her story. There's a lot to take in with her.
Yeah, and before we well, in the meantime, while you're doing that, I sent out a letter, I think yesterday morning, an email, as well as the interview with
Samir.
Samir, sorry. I posted another one by the interview with Judy Samuel, who is an Egyptian American woman with, as I said in the letter, and it's in the description under the video, has a lot of first-hand knowledge and understanding about the orphanage, and so Janet interviewed her, and so that's up for you to watch. She has a lot of interesting insights to give, and she also has written a script for a movie about Lillian, which she is trying to get made now. So watch the interview and be sure to click on the link in the description of it that takes you to another page where Judy shares about her movie and what she's doing with that. And it has some great pictures of Lillian.
Some photos.
On the page.
Which aren't readily available. I mean, if you do want pictures on somebody, sometimes I find, and I've been using this with Tolkien, the easiest way is just to go to Google Images and just put in their name, and you'll find pretty much whatever's on the internet you will find there, and sketches and things like that. And I find that has now become my go-to place to find photographs, which is cheap and easy and free, so very cool. So we have someone, I am 3AYV6R. I don't know if we pronounce that in some way, but I'm not going to try. She loved the ending quote, "I felt encouraged to stick to the work God has given me, raising up kids for his kingdom." Well, that's what Lillian was doing, really, wasn't it? She did it in grand scale, but her everyday life was pretty mundane. A lot of laundry, a lot of, holding children who are upset, crying, sick, a lot of feeding them, a lot of just attending, a lot of cutting out clothes and sewing and instructing them and teaching them. Just the mundane things. That's really what we're all doing, but it can all add up. So thank you for sharing that. Thumbot said, "I love that most of the wound missionaries just go for it without thinking like Mary Slessor." Yeah, I would agree. To me, Mary Slessor is just like in a class of her own. She's just like, I don't know if we can say what I think she is. She just goes for it. I'll never forget when I was reading her biography, and she had written in the margin of her Bible against something that St. Paul said about a woman, and Lillian Trasher wrote in Mary Slessor wrote in the margin, Nee, Paul laddie, you've got it all wrong." I was like, oh my goodness. But she had experience on her side, and she had experienced something different, and she wasn't afraid to say it. So yeah, I just love that too. Bear12 thought it was cool how she would just stop and pray for the things she needed. God provided everything without her having a regular income. Absolutely, Bear. I mean, that is pretty astonishing. I don't even know where she could have found a regular income to care for all those children. Like her church at home couldn't put it together. The Egyptian government, if you wasn't interested, and still do not help these kind of institutions at all with any kind of tax exemptions or anything like that. So, yeah, it is pretty cool. So Elaine said, "I love how the orphanage gets so big and it still grows." I mean, that, to me, to set up something that goes beyond your own life is a special skill. I mean, I think we can all think of people who are charismatic enough or driven enough to really get something going, but to have it outlast you by 100 years it means that you have set up an extraordinary kind of system, an extraordinary a kind of apprenticeship model for other people to follow you, and that's kind of, from my experience, a little bit out of the normal. A lot of these kind of things go well the person who had the initial vision and the drive and the charisma is in charge, but Lillian was able to, kind of divest the whole running of it, to train other people up, to encourage other people to be under her, to rise up so that when she did pass away, it didn't collapse. And that is not 100% normal in ministries. So more power to her. There's a lot of humility there in allowing that to happen. Don't you think, Geoff?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's an amazing story, and what she did was incredible. And like we say, it's a wonderful demonstration of just God coming through for her in these very tight situations. It's and the way that I think that I really enjoyed was the way that this was faith enabling and faith growing for the children that she had taken in. That, like, okay, God does really care about us.
Which is what Lauren says here. It's so incredible how Lillian was able to send all the children away, was about to send all the children away because she couldn't take care of them all anymore. And then they all bowed before God and trusted him together to provide for them. Yeah, I mean, that was just a very moving scene where I think she really understood that she was not carrying this alone, and that the kids too had their own faith and their own trust, and it all worked out. And yeah, that is pretty special. All right, we've got someone from York, Pennsylvania, and I have been busy this week and I have not looked at Tom, but I certainly will. I promise I'll have that for you next week.
Yeah, you intend to, I know.
I know,
It's a crazy busy week.
I go, when I get on Ancestry.com, I go down rabbit holes, so I just couldn't be in a rabbit hole this week, but I will definitely see what I can rustle up. And Lauren said, hi Caleb, thought it was so cool how the ship brought the container full of things for the orphanage. Have you ever seen how big a container is? And like one of those big trucks on the road that we see in the States, it has one container on it. And to empty all of that out for an orphanage is just how wonderful.
Yeah.
How wonderful.
Yeah, that's a lot of stuff.
You got to have somewhere to put it.
Yeah, because some may not know, I was a head cook on a ship once, and I mean the amount of stores we had just to feed people on the ship, and then all the stuff that we had in the holds you needed a lot of trucks to put that in.
Yeah, that was crazy. So, Brooke, age 13, how do you know where you are, where God wants you to be? Well, Brooke, that is a very good question. That's why we're reading these books, right? I would say that you, what would I say? I would say that you use the peace in your heart to know if you are in doing what God wants you to do or not, if you feel a peace about it. And I would say that if you are praying on your own and with other people, that they can help you as well. But in the end, I think it comes down to, is it in line with what God's word? And then is it something that when you think about it, you feel peace and you feel energized to do? I don't think that, Lillian made some really, really tough decisions. But she always felt a peace afterwards, and she always felt energized, and she moved forward. And I think that's something that we need to check in with with ourselves about, and make sure, that this is how are we feeling about it? Are we feeling like this is a peaceful thing in our hearts, or do we feel agitated? And I know sometimes Geoff and I have made some very difficult decisions, but they come with a kind of a sense of, okay, we can do this, not a sense of fear and stress. Wouldn't you say, Geoff?
Yeah, I think so. And I think the other important thing is God might call us to something and then to something else and something else. And so here we're with Lillian, who most of her life was just involved with children in orphanages, and that was her real mission. Other people are called to other things, but then something else comes into focus for them. For me, I trained to be a pastor, but then decided that I didn't have all of the, I wasn't fitted well to
Patience is the word.
to be in that mold. And as I said before, then I moved and I became a head cook on, some of you may have heard of Mercy Ships. I was for a time the head cook on the Anastasis. And that was great. And I thought, wow, this is it. I found it. Yeah, I like this. But then God opened another door. And 42 years ago, as different doors opened, writing came across my bow. And suddenly, yeah, that is what I am totally and absolutely suited to do. I never knew it, but by sort of moving, I just discovered that I have the gifts and everything that's needed to do this and to do it as best I can.
And I think that's a really interesting point, is that, when we get moving and we try something, we're much more likely to be able to find where we fit. It's kind of like a ship. If it just kind of stays docked until it knows exactly where it's going, perhaps it will never leave the wharf. And sometimes we have to be like that. We have to just think, okay, I feel like I would like to work, God wants me to work with children, say. And so, all right, well, what can I do now? Can I go volunteer, in a special needs after school club or something, I don't think you have to know exactly where you belong. I think that's a bit of from all the books we've read, that doesn't seem to be how things start out. It seems more like a direction, and then as you get into it, as you sail off, then God can direct you one way or another. But it's very hard to direct something that's not moving. So I would say, if you feel like maybe you want to work with in speech pathology or something like that, we'll just kind of explore it and see, does that lead you to feeling more confident, more comfortable, more like this is for you, or does it kind of move the other way? And look at Lillian. I mean, she started out in someone else's orphanage, really, with just doing what she was told, which I imagine was a lot of changing of diapers or nappies and a lot of bathing little kids, nothing very exciting, glamorous. She didn't have any credentials whatsoever to do this, but she kind of got along the way, and then God can take that and direct something that's already in motion. I feel like that's something I would say from all the hundreds of missionary stories we've read.
Yeah, because everybody is, well, I like to say everybody is we're becoming something, and I think our job, God has created us who we are, has given us this mind and these gifts and different things. Our job is to start discovering who we really are. Who did he make us? Or how has he made us? And okay, as we come to that realization and then finding the place where we can be who he made us to be, with the most effective outreach to other people. And so and that's why I think we're always becoming, because it's always this journey that we're on, because we're actually always learning, and as we learn, we change, and we're also then discovering new things about ourselves. So
there we go.
Climb on for the ride.
So Nehemiah from Pennsylvania, hello Nehemiah, says, I like how all the kids were praying when she said that she had to send them away, and God responded. I know, I think that was very difficult to write, because it's like, Lillian, you've trusted God so many times, and now you're actually gonna disband all the kids, and I think she just came to the end of it. And we are human, and we do come to the end of things, and sometimes it's just too much to contemplate going on. But at that point, the kids gave her what she needed to keep going. And that's a very moving sequence to write. It could have gone either way. I think she really had come to the end of it and felt like for the children's sake they needed to be somewhere else. But it worked out.
Right. And that's part of the stories that we tell is like, these are human beings and we're all frail in our own ways. We all falter sometimes. That's part of what keeps us reading is like, okay, how did they evolve through this? How did they get past these particular things? Or, wow, they could have this together and make this fatal mistake. And, well, it's so we identify with those things because we are all fallible human beings.
Right, we're not like robots for God. I mean, people still have, they get discouraged, they get depressed. We've written about some people who got majorly depressed and had a lot to be depressed about. But it's not that defines you. It's what you do next. And do you get up and keep going, or do you just stay down there? Do you get the help you need, or do you get the support you need, and do you get up and keep going? And I think there's several books that we've written where, like, Adoniram Judson comes to point more than anybody, I think, as somebody who really struggled with keeping going, but he did under some truly awful circumstances.
Right. And so did John Patton, whose book isn't published yet. Went through some really hard times.
Okay, so Love for Peace says, I loved how she adopted the first child even though other missionaries were against it. And yeah, that's an example of where Lillian's peace came from following her desire to save that child's life, literally. And that overrode any kind of advice that she was getting from her senior missionaries or anything else. That was something she just knew God wanted her to do, and she was going to do it. And they were going to sink or swim together. And so I think that's a really good example. Emma 12 said that it is very testing and trying when Lillian rejected, but when accepted the two boys during the cholera outbreak and thought it was the right thing, then one of them got cholera. I know. I mean, sometimes we write things and we're like, oh, that really happened. It's not tidy. It's not like everything turned out great. It's like, it's real life. Things can go either way. Just because she was a Christian and praying doesn't mean that everything is always great at all. And so, we could leave that out, but that was something that happened, and it's a really sad moment in the book. But that's the truth, and we like to include that because again, we're trying to show that these are people and that they have hard times and good times and all sorts of times. Okay. Emma 11 said, Emma aged 11 said, were you always Christians? Geoff?
Well, I was born and raised in a Christian denomination. So, there was you grow into it in one sense. And it was a very, to me, it was actually a denomination that some of you may have read the George Mueller book, that George Mueller was one of the co-founders of it. And it was very missionary oriented and very devout.
And you went to church.
And we went to church and Sunday school.
And your dad helped run the kids outreach program. And
so you're around it. So you're absorbing that. So to say there was one big moment where I can't really say that, but my life was slowly evolving in faith.
And for me, I grew up in my parents were Episcopalians or Anglicans, and I became a Christian when I was 16. And had a friend who took me to a different church, and that really struck me as something that I needed. So that's the answer to that one, Emma. And Caleb says it's so miraculous that their kitchen didn't explode in the fire. Oh my goodness, yes. And very brave of anyone to go near it, because that was pretty crazy, wasn't it?
Especially with kerosene, which
Yes.
when we were kids in New Zealand, you used to burn your trash, and my parents would send us out the back of our property to burn the trash, and me and my brother used to use kerosene as an accelerant, and we're lucky to be alive because we used to love throwing tins of the
Yeah, no, we
stuff.
shouldn't be saying this to kids.
So
No.
I can attest to it. It's
No.
very explosive.
Stay away from any kind of gasoline and any kind of fire.
Well, they had every right to be worried.
Yes, this is not good.
Yeah.
This is a New Zealand upbringing many years ago.
Yeah. If you did it now, you'd be in trouble.
No, we won't be going there. Okay, so thank you for sharing what struck you about the story. And I'm wondering if any of you have used any of the questions that we put down for, intergenerational conversations. I find that is something that really speaks to my heart, is how to extend the stories, as I've said. And so a few weeks ago, we were at a Florida homeschool convention in Orlando, and we're very lucky here. We have a lot of conventions come here. And we met a young lady. She was, I think she was about 18, and her parents were both Egyptian, and she'd been raised here in the States. And she had read Lillian Trasher, and her grandmother, who still is Egyptian and lives in Egypt and isn't very fluent in English, had read Lillian Trasher in Arabic. And so they had read it at the same time, and they'd got on a Facebook Live together, and they were able to discuss her story in 2 languages. And I just thought that just made my heart sing, because that's what I love, is the thought of people sharing it across languages, across generations. That's very cool. And I wanted to point out to you, where are my
What would you
study guides? They're behind me. And if you didn't know, we do have some study guides here that I wrote. I was an elementary school teacher before I became a writer. And so I've put together these. Some of you are probably very familiar with them. I think there's about 15 that I wrote. And they are just got a lot of things, a lot of questions you can ask, a lot of cross subject matter, how to use them in science, depending on what the book is, in geography and history. They're written kind of as a resource, so it's not a how-to book, but basically just go through it. And if you want to extend one of our stories, and not all of them are study guides, but the ones that are, just go through it with a highlighter, and just, again, the things that appeal to you and your family. We have a very diverse family ourselves, and so we're not into one size fits all at all. We like the idea of giving people options, and they can choose what works best for them. So just thought I'd mention that in case anybody wants to take one of these books and extend it into their schoolwork, or maybe some of you already have.
Yeah, and you can find those at YWAM Publishing, and they have several more that we use the same format, but we got busy, and so we didn't put them together, but they are available.
Yes. And Lauren says it's sad that during the rebellion so many Egyptians had losses, even though they were rebelling from the British. Egyptians hurt Egyptians. Yes, everybody. I think, it's colonialism, which, is our family culture, our history. Being basically British and Scottish colonists to New Zealand.
Don't forget the Irish.
And the Irish are all our ancestors. And yeah, you do, when you see it from the other side, from the local side, it has quite a devastating impact on people. And it's just the way things go, isn't it? Nations want to own resources that other nations have. They pick on the weak ones. Yikes! It's history. So it is tough to write about. When we were doing Hudson Taylor, I remember writing about Hong Kong and China and the Opium Wars, which again are a pretty shocking example of the British Empire's just
Dark side.
Dark side. We'll just leave it at that. Yeah, and being a Commonwealth citizen my whole life, I'm like, oof. We don't always get to see it from the other team's side, but yeah, it is sad, and it's just a byproduct of colonialism, I think. Nias 8 thought it was amazing how Lillian cried out to God during the fire and it just stopped and stared and watched the flames starting to go down. I agree. And that is something that, as I was reading back through the book, there's this saying that truth is stranger than fiction, or people say you couldn't make this up. And both of those sayings are sort of saying the same thing, is that you can't, when you write fiction, and this is a conversation that writers often have, when you write fiction, people think, oh, you're lucky to be able to write fiction because you can write anything you want. You just, if it's in your imagination, it can come out. And yeah, that's true. But the problem with writing fiction is that something like Lillian's story could never be written as fiction. Well, because nobody would read it. Right. Because about 5 minutes into the story, all of us would be thinking, that isn't really possible. That didn't really happen. And after a while of, unless you're reading a fantasy or a sci-fi or something, you would put the book down and go, this is just not believable. Because truth is stranger than fiction. You could only write Lillian's story as nonfiction because it really did happen. And so when you think about fiction, fiction kind of has to stay in the middle of the road with what's plausible and not plausible. And that's one of the problems with writing Christian fiction, is like, how much can you put in that is out of the ordinary or looks miraculous, because then people are just going to be like, nah, that's not going to happen. But the thing with Lillian is it did happen. I mean, Lillian was there. The orphanage is still there today. There are people who can talk about it. There are records. There are newspaper articles. There's magazine articles. Reader's Digest had an article which really helped her tremendously, which are contemporaneous, which means they occurred at the same time as the event. So that's very important to us when we do our research. Yeah. Is not that somebody said, 50 years later, Lillian did this and Lillian did that. But we like to go back and say, okay, this article was written at that time. What did that person who went there and saw, what did they see? And that's called contemporaneous, at the same time. And that holds a lot of weight, because it's not about somebody exaggerating or coming back later and overlaying their own ideas on it. And so Lillian's story is true, but it is also very hard to believe, and that's why it has to be as nonfiction. Otherwise, it would never see the light of day. Nobody would think that could really happen. It's a very, very improbable story, but also a true story. What do you think, Jeffrey?
Yes, I agree. I'm reminded of a woman we were partnering with many years ago, when we were first starting out writing the books, and we were developing some educational products with her, and she read some of our books, and we were talking, and I said, well, they're Christian stories, and she was not a Christian, and she said, I don't care. They said, these are incredible stories. And I think that's the important part. A good story is a good story. And for us, as we sit down to write narrative, what we write is called narrative nonfiction in the writing trade, then our job is to make it seem kind of plausible and put it together. And so, I've had lots of conversations with fiction writers like, we can't do that. They'll tell me, because nobody will believe it, because the idea of plausibility is a big issue in writing any kind of a story.
And sometimes we actually have to even not write it as dramatically as it happened, because even then, like, and do we have Charles Morley's story there? Do we have this book? One book we wanted to mention was Charles Morley. For anybody who hasn't read it, We Are Family. It would be a really good one to read.
It's a great follow-on.
When you've finished the 6 books, the 3 books that we're doing, because it's happening today. Charles and his wife are still alive, and they're in Kenya, and that man has an incredible, unbelievable vision.
Yes.
And he has over 10,000 children that he has adopted. He's like Lillian. He's not like, they're not a holding pad for someone else to come and take them. They are his children. And he's in Kenya. He's a Kenyan. And some of the things that he has done, we actually had to kind of downplay them a little. I'm sure they were true. I mean, we saw the documentation, but it's still like, gosh, it's just very straining to, to not think that we're exaggerating. And another person, oddly enough, is Klaus Dieter John, who I can't wait for you to read in the last 2 weeks. I mean, his stories, you just wait till he's going to give us a special interview. Wait till you hear from him. You're like, it's mind-boggling. So, yeah, this is a story that's very, very similar in that it's a man who had compassion on children and decided that he and his wife decided to take them in, but they had teenagers at this point, and all did not go well initially with melding some very wealthy teenage children with some very poor street kids. It had its own little adventures, as you could well imagine. Okay. Emma wants to know what your testimony is and how many missionary stories on how God has delivered them. So we'll have to do a separate thing on that, Emma, because it's a very long, involved story that, a lot of people ask about. So we will do a special thing on that.
Yes, and we tell people, like, you've got to write your own story, but I don't think we're the best people to tell our own story.
Better to have a little bit of...
People, from experience, when people tell their own stories, they either overvalue themselves or undervalue themselves. It's very hard to get an accurate read on yourself. Other people are the ones that can do that.
Noah says, it's incredible how people like the Scottish Lord were so generous, and all the miracles with the money, like the letter with the wrong address and the donations from people she didn't know. Yeah, I mean, that Scottish Lord, that is a truly amazing story. And he gave a lot of money. And then he started an orphanage himself. So he was very touched, not only touched to give, but touched to do it himself, which is extra amazing. Yeah. Maria 15 says, I like how the Lord from Scotland was so generous with Lillian. So you guys are on the same page there. We've got Noah and Maria, you are in sync there. Which book number was Lillian in your order of books?
I can't remember off the top of my head. It's somewhere probably in the around 20, low 20s.
I was going to say about 18, so
yeah,
somewhere in there.
Somewhere in that range, yeah.
And actually, Lillian is one of the people that we had never heard of. Right. A lot of the people that we write about, we have heard of, or we've read in another book, something like that, or people are always telling us of ideas. But we actually had not heard of Lillian Trasher. And our publisher, Tom Bragg, who came from the same denominational background, he had grown up with her. You know, in your own denomination, you have your own sort of favorite missionaries. And so he told us about Lillian and encouraged us to write her. And I think it's still his favorite story. That's what he tells everyone at conventions, that Lillian is his favorite story. So that's how we came to do Lillian. Did you watch the Nile Mother documentary that was done about her? No, I have not yet. As I said, we've been very busy in the last 2 weeks, but I want to, for sure.
And yeah, when we were writing that, there are more resources
Yes.
now on her story. There wasn't a whole lot, and we got a lot of help from the Assemblies of God's archive. And there were a couple of books, Lester Summerall's book on her, which we actually reference.
And then we handed them on to Judy because she hadn't been able to. Sometimes we get very obscure books. There's just probably never were a lot of them in print, and now they're 70 years old or whatever, and there's very few. So we like to be able to share those resources where we can. And Lauren also says, it's so neat you could read the letters that she'd written in the news articles about her. Yes, I think that's keeps us very grounded in what we write. Because if they didn't mention it or say it at the time, then ooh, it could be kind of someone's opinion afterwards. So yeah, it's very important to us to read. I think journals and diaries is another one. Anytime that someone's got a journal, it's just gold for us, because that tells us what they were thinking and what they were doing and why they were doing it at the time, rather than just sort of imposing order on it afterwards.
Yeah, it comes back to that contemporaneous thing you were talking about before. This is who they were, what they were writing at the time these events were transpiring.
And Jim and Jan said, what is the best email to contact you?
The best email to contact us right now is probably through inquiry@bengebooks.com.
Okay. And we do respond.
That's the simple one. The other one is bengebooks2@gmail.com.
But yeah, just keep it simple, and we check it and we try to respond, and because we like to be part of this community. And have you ever thought about doing Margaret Wilson? I am not familiar with that name. Are you familiar with that name, Geoff?
No.
Tell me a little bit about her, and I'll
or shoot us an email.
Yes, yeah,
with her details, and
we'll have a look. We have a lot of people suggest books to us, and sometimes actually Klaus Dieter John, who we are going to do next, he suggested we look into Charles Mooley, and we had never heard of Charles Mooley, and he said that Charles Mooley was his hero, and we're like, oh, all right, if he inspires Klaus, we better have a look, and that's when we discovered Charles Mooley. So we were able to go from one book to the other, which was really cool. And that happens sometimes, that somebody does suggest somebody that we jump on board with. Sometimes there's not enough material. Sometimes it's only a small portion of their life. Sometimes there's not enough. As you would see, we like to do as much about their childhood as we can. Sometimes there's no childhood to write about. Though Lillian Trasher, there's not much childhood on hers.
Right. But then, we mentioned in our last live stream, well, I think I did, we're looking for certain things that not every story we can tell in our style of storytelling, which is what you all as readers kind of want. It's like, tell us another story, but just like you told that one. And not every story will fit into that format. And of course, publishers want people have bought them just like this. They want, so there are some constraints, and sometimes, and we've written different stories, but not as part of this series, that we've adapted to fit different kinds of stories into. It's not that it can't be done. It's that the ones we write we're looking for a particular kind of story.
Right. If they don't have certain elements in them, we're like, it's not going to work. And one thing is, it's got to be suitable for kids, is interesting for kids as well as for adults. Some people, as I think we said, are very academic, And so it's tricky to make it interesting to kids. They're like, who cares? So we can't be doing that. So it's a balancing act, and we can take quite a long time just looking at resources, gathering books, looking at stuff online, YouTube videos, stuff like that, to just figure out, is this something that we can adapt. Sometimes we can make exceptions in one kind of area, like Gladys Aylward, which is one of our best sales. We have nothing about her childhood. We don't really know anything about her childhood, apart from she had a brother and a sister, and her father was a postman. So we had to kind of just start with her at about 19, I think. And actually Lillian Trasher, we don't have much on her childhood either, which is challenging. But if the rest of it makes up for it, we can do it. But it's definitely a consideration. And, somebody like David Livingston, who, we know a lot about his childhood, working in the cotton mills in Scotland, and just, what a bleak story of, 8-year-olds working full time, and, no safety precautions, no labor laws, just kids getting maimed and whatever, so there's a lot there, and really the hopelessness of no education and already having your life kind of mapped out. And so that makes it, that's an easy check that box. So there's that. It is crazy that none of this would have happened if she'd married Tom, which, is, good for Tom too, for saying that this wasn't his calling. He could have easily said, okay, well, let's go. But it really wasn't, what he felt called to. And, we just don't know, do we? What perhaps Lillian had to know that she'd made that choice, and laid that down to really embrace what was ahead of her. I don't know, but yeah. Emma 12 said, when Lillian went to the flooded village and got £5 on the way back, she thought they were going to drown. She tied the money tight if I drowned. Ugh. They will find it for the brick. She was very practical, wasn't she? And that's a little tearjerker there. But she was like, worst case scenario, they'll have £5 for bricks. And I think that's one of the things that struck me, that I remember from the first time I when I wrote it, and the first time, is just the initiative that she and all the kids had. They literally just made their own dormitories, which is crazy. And they had very little to work with: a bit of mud, a bit of straw, a bit of water, and then she was able to get someone to supervise, who a builder who knew what he was doing. But just start where you are with what you have and see how far you can get. It's kind of the same thing as the ship thing. Get moving, get out there, get going, and then things can happen. Yes, Emma thought it was so generous. She really thought of her own needs, only the children. I think most mothers have that feeling too. Like, what is the point of you having your needs met if you put your children first? And I think she really was a mother to those children, and she did put them first. Elaine says, do you only focus on the Christian heroes, or do you write other genres or people?
Well, as some of you might be aware, this series, that these ones we're reading is the Christian heroes. Then and now there's another series which is the Heroes of History, which there is some history curriculum around that our publisher did, and so it started with American history and has broadened out. But we're looking for not necessarily Christians, but people who, have an inspiring message, I guess, or their life is inspiring to
and
others, pivotal in history. And so that's kind of the criteria that goes into that series. And I think it was a little different than the Christian hero. So it had a slower trajectory as it started, but now it sells pretty well.
Yes. And the idea was that if we write about someone who is not a missionary or something like that, but really did play an important role in changing something, that we would write about them. And if we were Christian, we would put their Christian faith in there and not shy away from it. But if they weren't, that if they, they would still have something to say to us. So it was kind of the idea behind that.
And I think that sometimes we always think about only somebody with a Christian background can produce a story that means anything to me. But every life has moments that are interesting, sometimes very inspiring. So we're and that's what I think I said last time, we want to entertain our readers, we want to inform our readers and inspire them. So we're looking for those qualities. And one of the men that we want to write about in the not too distant future here is Sir Edmund Hillary, who was a New Zealander. He was the first man to stand on top of Mount Everest. And his story is, many people don't realize that he's just famous for that. But no, his story is phenomenal. It's so inspirational, and that's the reason we grew up on that story. Lots of people met Sir Edmund Hillary, and the cost, because then he went and did a lot of humanitarian work in Nepal. His wife and son were killed there and stuff. So his story is,
pretty special.
Yeah.
So we find people like that too. Margaret Wilson was a young Scottish Covenanter from Wigtownshire who was executed by drowning for refusing to renounce her faith in the national covenant and the authority of Christ over the church. Well, that sounds a heavy one. I'll definitely look into it. We have to, executed by drowning. I mean, to me, like, we did Nate Saint and Jim Elliot, who were martyred. And so we don't not do martyrs, but it just from a writer's point of view, it's like, oh, this is not going to be a happy ending here. And then the other thing I'm thinking is refusing to renounce your faith in the national covenant. So some of these books have a lot of theology in them, and theology is very difficult to keep a kid's attention, or even my attention, with theology. But not to say it isn't a good book, and I will definitely look into it. But initially, like we say, it has to check all the boxes. Those are two boxes that I'd be looking at really carefully in that one. We did Bonhoeffer, who had a lot of theology, was a theologian, and that was challenging. We told you about that last week. But we'll definitely look into it. She sounds absolutely fascinating. Lived through a hard period of history, obviously. Nidus 8, what does it mean to be a lord in Scotland? Well, we have lords and ladies in Scotland. And actually in the British Commonwealth, it's a term that the British royal family bestow on people who are very influential in England and Scotland and Ireland. It's a throwback to when people were important because they had a lot of land and they could raise an army and things like that. So it's kind of what we would call anachronistic, which means it's kind of a little out of sync with today. Modern times. Like people with a lot of land, big farmers can't raise their own armies and go fight other farmers. That's not how it works right now. But there was a time when all the land belonged to the sovereign or the king, and then he appointed people to be lords who then owned or took control of big swaths of his land, and then he managed all the people that lived on there. It harkens back to a time when you didn't actually own private property, but you lived and you had to give, if you got farmed some of the lord's land, you
had to give him so much of what you produced and sell the rest. And so that anachronistic in today's world, but we still use these titles like and Sir, which goes back to the time of the knights, etc.
And normally people who are lords and ladies or sirs or dames, things like that, traditionally they would have a lot of wealth because they lived in castles or very big houses and had a lot of land, and had a lot of influence. And even in the Parliament in England today, there is, there's the House of Lords, which is the house of people who are influential generationally, like their grandfathers, their great-grandfathers before them all sat in the House of Lords and all had a sway over what happens in British politics. So it's a different system, and it's people of influence and normally of money. But sometimes now people can become a sir or something like that because they have done something amazing, like
like Ed Hillary, who climbed Mount Everest.
Or Beckham, what's his name?
David Beckham.
David Beckham became a sir because he sort of is kind of an ambassador for Britain in that he did something great and raised Britain's. So it's there's sort of two ways to you're either someone who's done something really good for England. I think even some of the Beatles are sirs, aren't they?
Yes.
They didn't start out that way, but or you have inherited it through many, many generations. Do you have any information what happened to the mission where the Brailsford couple were working in a sat? No, I don't. But we could look into that. I must say they don't come across as inspiring, but they had their own lane. They stayed in their own lane, shall we put it that way. And Laurel says it's so shocking when the government made them take away the Muslim children from Christian orphanages. Oh. Yeah, especially when the kids didn't want to go. I mean, whose interest was that in? It was a tough one, wasn't it? But I'm sure that happens, when there's unrest in a country, civil unrest, that must happen. Yeah. It happens in a lot of countries where people who are really looking after children from another group, racial group or political group or whatever, are denied that opportunity. And it is very sad. Yes, I do think it was very rude to say you can keep the blind one, she's hideous. Yes. But good that Lillian got to keep her, yes. And in a lot of these very traditional societies that didn't have a lot of access to medicine and stuff, the children who did have disabilities were not looked after and did not have resources poured into them because the assumption is that they wouldn't last long. And when we lived in the Philippines, we saw that firsthand. And it's a very sad thing. And it's one reason that really is inspiring about what we see about Down syndrome now, is that there's people who now are dedicated to making sure that they have the best, healthiest life they can. And they've actually doubled the age of
life expectancy.
Their life expectancy is actually doubled, I think, probably in the last
30 years.
30 years, yeah, which is insane. It used to be mid-30s, I think, and now it's like mid-60s, so it must be even younger. But yeah, it's definitely, you have to have people in a society who are willing to work with people who have disabilities and respect them and work for the best life that they can have, rather than just saying, well, they can't have the same life that I'm having, so they're not worth doing anything with. And so that's something that Lillian did, and yeah, that's an amazing thing. Okay, let's someone did ask about a writing course, if we did writing courses, and we have taught writing a lot. We haven't done a writing course for the public. I have done a journaling course which has just come out, which is for middle high school kids. It's epic learning. If you want to, I'll put something about that on somewhere. Something. Yeah. If anybody is interested in that, I'm very interested in just kind of writing and journaling and getting those writing juices going, and it's a 12-week course, self-paced. It's amazing, I think. I wish I'd had it when I was a kid. I didn't really have anyone to encourage me with my writing.
Right. And you are thinking of doing that because so many adults have asked you about that and an adult version of that. So if you're interested, let us know.
Or there's a lot of ways we could go. Like we are just really experimenting with being online, and we could do a course for adults on our writing. We could do a course for kids. We could do a journaling course for adults. We could write a book and dissect it as we go. I mean, we've got 100 ideas, and so we're just kind of thinking, well, what would people want? So if there's something that you would want us to do, just let us know, and we'll definitely be grateful for that kind of feedback.
Because we've done a lot of teaching around the world, but mostly in like writing schools and to groups of people who really want to be writers. So, but we want to pass on, because as you're finding, and some of you have already mentioning people to us, there are more stories here than we can ever write. We're not getting any younger, and we've written a lot of stories in the 28 years that we've been writing these, but we want to be able to help other people to be the carry-on. You know, I told you last week in the live stream that John and Elizabeth Sherrill, who wrote The Cross and the Switchblade and The Hiding Place and a whole heap of other books, they taught us what they knew about writing narrative nonfiction. And then we took that and over 40 years have made it our own and gone on. They would only write about live people, like, you know, The Cross and the Switchblade, Dave Wilkerson and that. But we started writing about whole lives, but using some of their methods. And so we want to pass on and kind of that track what we've learned so that other people can have some idea of how to approach it and begin to write some of these other stories that we're obviously not going to get to because there's just not enough time left.
Well, and for every story we write, there's like 3 more that we are aware of that we could write. Another thing we've thought about is gathering a group of people who have a book, like someone who wants to write Margaret Wilson, and having kind of a private group of people who like to guide them through it and to kind of learn together. So, I mean, there's 100 ways to go, but if anyone's got any ideas,
feel free.
We'd love to hear from you. And
inquiry@bengebooks.com. Let us know.
We are very excited to. If you're finished with Lillian Trasher, if you're completely finished the book, just put a Y in the comments for yes. Because I know some of you'd have to have read slightly more than 1 chapter a day to finish it. And we are moving on to Louis
Zamperini will be our next book. A very different story from Lillian.
Very different.
But a very good story. Gripping, an amazing story. I think you're going to like it.
It's definitely got a lot of history embedded in it. It's a good story for boys. So Laurel and her family have finished. That's awesome.
Right.
So you're ready to start on the next one. And Brooke is a published author of the homeschooling magazine out of North Carolina. Good for you, Brooke.
Yes.
That's impressive. You know what? I really don't think that being a good writer is, particularly age specific. I think some people are just naturally good, and we are all improving. Like, we have not reached our potential yet. We still have more to learn, and we do learn. And I do make adjustments and think, I would have done that last time, but I think I can do a little bit different now. So there's never an end point, Brooke. Just keep going. And Doris, your family's finished. That is awesome. And we look forward to Louis Zamperini.
Yes.
And I know I remember several people have told me that when they read Louis Zamperini to their kids, about 3 chapters in, the kids are getting a little a little distraught because they're like, Mom, when does he turn good? Like he's a mischievous kid, and I think that there's some concern that this is like, is this ever going to turn around, or where are we going with him?
No, it's a great story, and this one is part of the Heroes of History series we were talking about before, and not one of the Christian heroes, but it doesn't. It's a great story, and it is a Christian story.
But yes, for sure, and yeah. So I think we'll leave you there. And Cherish, you've got 2 more chapters to read. I'm sure you'll get through them because now you've got momentum on your side and you've got the weekend. And we'll start on the next one, and we will see you next week. I've got my homework to do.
Yes, and this live will go up on our website. It'll be available for if you want to come back and watch it, or you have anybody else that might be interested in it. Just send them over there to our Benge Books Facebook page, and you'll find it.
And thank you for spending this hour with us. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you next week.
Happy reading.
Bye.
Bye.